Hello, everybody, and welcome to Trek Prime, episode 39. We're close to 40 here. That's a bit of a milestone, but anyway, we're a day delayed because of personal circumstances. Okay, and this subject matter this week is something we've been talking about for a couple weeks now, and it's going to be kind of a complicated one to explain. I don't even know what I'm going to title this yet, but I'm kind of thinking about it as we do it. As many of you out there know, on the 27th of the month of February was the anniversary of Gene Roddenberry passing away. And that's very apropos because tonight we're going to be discussing Gene Roddenberry, the great bird of the galaxy himself, who all of a sudden in the 1990s became more of an extremely controversial figure within Star Trek. And it's only grown because Star Trek itself has also grown controversial. And basically, so here's the framework. Tonight we're basically going to be discussing Gene Roddenberry, his history as it went with the vision of Star Trek, and how contemporary Star Trek and attitudes toward it correlate with the facts of who he was and what he wanted. And Jeff actually wrote out a speech that he is going to read to you because he needed to write it down. So I'm going to let him take it from there.
I had to write out this opening thing because for the sake of the audience being able to understand what I'm getting at, I had to be coherent. So for tonight, I think what we wanted to do was try to answer the kind of the question, why are so many Trekkers today so ticked off by the SJW ideals that they're seeing now, in Star Trek, the movies and the last ones anyway, and the new series and stuff like that. And why, that they're just labeling it as being, stale, or whatever. The funny thing is there was no reinvention of the wheel here for Star Trek. I mean, it lasted for decades. It showed lots of diversity mixed with social commentary type stories. It always left people pondering on philosophical matters when an episode would end, which is what we do here on Trek Prime. Modern Trek creators, right now they're using gender and race to excuse the fact that, they seem to have created no real characters or plot to even give you something to ponder. They're like token characters, basically, and they don't really explore these characters any. The funny thing is on the show, the Orville, and I know, a lot of people probably don't want to hear about it, but, with its college kind of humor they have, it has a cast that has, a gay couple and a lot more diverse characters. They got, a lot of differences and stuff like that. And they don't really brag about that fact that they have all this diversity to make up for the poor writing or, the unbelievability of the characters. And, one of the things, I recently saw on the internet was people trying to label the Prime Directive as being too SJW nonsense, which is, what I think is alt-right nonsense.
Yes, I have heard that one too, and I'm glad you brought that up.
And, the thing about the alt-right is, they believe in white pride, patriarchy, and authoritarianism.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah, rather than democracy. So, these are the ones that are all upset about, a female Doctor Who. And
right.
They were mad when Deep Space Nine had a black captain, and Voyager when they had a female captain.
Right.
They also had a fit at how Star Trek shows when they talked about war, they didn't like the idea that it was depicted as a bad thing that compromised ideals and values. They didn't believe that. So all they do is sit on the internet and howl at the void. They write petty reviews about people pushing their liberal agenda on us and how there shouldn't be such a thing as hate crimes because, the uppity Middle Eastern looking dudes had it coming kind of thing is what you get out of them. And everything is a conspiracy to defraud, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male from his rightful place as ruler of the world. So, the alt-right is really the natural enemy to, the social justice warrior. And Gene Roddenberry had specific ways of doing things, and the writers were expected to follow the rules. So that's like a throw out to Harlan Ellison there, who didn't want to follow the rules. But, even way after his death, like the show Enterprise generally still carried out those expectations. And, now all that's been upended. And the writers are on a breakneck format that doesn't give people time to even understand what's going on before being thrust into something new that happens in a story. So Trek always was supposed to push boundaries, and the original series featured a racially and gender diverse cast. It was progressive for its day, but by today's standards, it wasn't terribly so. But the non-white crew members didn't get first names for a good long while. For example, and it was still a male-dominated led crew. But for a time, interracial kissing, a Russian on the bridge. I mean, back then that was pretty big stuff.
I just think they were there, right?
Yeah. So Star Trek today benefits from the 50 years of social progress, which is great, but to keep carrying forward that edginess, the modern Trek writers knew they had to push things further. But here's the thing they were up against. We already had a black captain, a woman captain. We already had strong female secondary leads like Roxanne Dawson's B'Elanna Torres, Jolene Blalock's T'Pol, Nana Visitor's Kira Nerys, all very strong female characters that were more than just eye candy. And to go beyond expectations, the writers would have to go bolder and bigger, and they just didn't. Instead they went for a special effects Emmy while forgetting about the fundamentals of good storytelling. But none of the boundaries that they pushed had anything to do with the story. And that's what we expected from Star Trek, as a story that explores concepts, not concepts thrown in as a means to an end, but as an end in and of itself. For example, again, the writers on Orville, which had zero expectations going in, didn't have to live up to anything. And yet they wildly succeeded at recreating a Star Trek SJW type show, quite possibly because a lot of the people working on it are, Star Trek alumni. These writers and directors understood how to work with audience expectations and subvert them in a way that still held onto a good story. One of the things they dealt with early on was a gay relationship and a powerful world-building story with Bortus' child being born female in an all-male society. That theme, the story touched on, were profound and relevant at the same time. I mean, what constitutes disability was one of the things they discussed in it, and patriarchal societies and hiding secrets in relationships, self-determination of children. Diversity isn't treated like a token nod on this show. They're explored in meaningful context and has a bearing on the story. Sadly, there's far more SJW in the Orville now than modern Star Trek. But the father of Star Trek was an old SJW patriot. So it's on that point I wanted to highlight a few examples, by quoting Gene Roddenberry himself from various interviews to prove it, and maybe explore each of those quotes and how they can be guides to write better Star Trek programs in his style. So
okay, and before you do that, I just wanted to say the series that you were talking about, it's happening now. I actually seen it. I've had it, and this is the only place I can actually mention this because we're talking about what current Star Trek is on TV streaming, such as it were now, and it's this. So the reason I'm saying that is because that's when you were talking about in terms Star Trek Discovery, in terms of how far can we push the envelope now that we've already done those things. But anyway, with Gene Roddenberry quotes, well, just when you go from there.
So you said you wanted to add something there on?
Well, no, I had a list of my own, by the way, of things that I'd written down that I wanted to correlate. But I wanted you to bring the Gene Roddenberry quotes in, and as you did, maybe I can link up what.
I was just going to take them one at a time, and
okay, well, you take them one at a time. Maybe I can fit my ideas into what you're doing here.
Okay. Well, one of the things about that Roddenberry said that, quote, "We must question the story logic of having an all-knowing, all-powerful God who creates faulty humans and then blames them for his own mistakes," which it makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
That's a very atheistic statement.
Yeah.
And the reason I wanted to mention that is because, and I wanted to note, and this is just a little nod, that was also assuming that quote is exact. Because on the internet they manipulate a lot of quotes. I'm sure you've all seen the "don't believe what you hear on the internet" next to somebody's face from Abraham Lincoln thing. But anyway, assuming that is, because I don't know why they would misquote Gene Roddenberry, but speaking to him, he usually stated things with pretty good eloquence. So I'm going to go with that as being a statement. But that being as it is, basically, that kind of goes with that thing he said in the motion picture, which always blew my mind growing up. We create God in our own image.
That's right.
Because in biblical terms, it's God created us in His own image. He flipped it around, and what you said kind of adds to that. And that actually goes with the idea of Star Trek upholding more conservative values. A lot of conservative values in the United States right now are based in the conservative value of religion having more pull than government.
Yeah.
Okay. And the United States,
it's like really taking us back,
right,
in our development as a society,
right, to the whole idea that when our nation was a collection of 13 colonies run by an agrarian economy, a lot of those towns didn't have governments per se. They had churches.
That's right.
Like in the Old West, you may have the brothel on Saturday, the preacher on Sunday.
Yeah.
And conservatives, they pump up the John Wayne, the cowboy, those characters. And like I said about Westerns, you can make social, and this gets into Gene Roddenberry again. How did he advertise Star Trek to the network? A wagon train to the stars, a space Western.
Yeah.
So, and I think, that's very deep because that was how that was. You had the whorehouse on Saturday and you had the preacher on Sunday. So it's like, it's Victorian. You do it, but don't talk about it, and you pray and pray the next day for it to all go away. And I think that, Gene Roddenberry was kind of trying to create a situation where, I don't know where religion started. We talked about that already. But I think it's important to know that he wanted human beings to concentrate on discovery and on learning and on the exploration of the universe and strange new worlds and to go where no one had gone before.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you constantly have subsidizing by religion coming in and saying, oh, you can't go out that far because you're gonna capture God or this or that. You'd have to kind of diminish that in society somewhat and make that kind of like we view the Roman gods today. We look at Zeus and Hera as a page from a book. They were once worshipped. I imagine that's how it functions in the future too. So Gene created a new world where humanity had grown out of its infancy. And I think part of conservative values today, especially since there's an upswell of conservatism with the current U.S. environment and the conservative Star Trek fans, which we have kind of alluded to in your earlier speech, is that, it kind of contradicts that because right out of his mouth, Gene spoke very much, as you just said, against human beings, kind of putting all of their ego into a higher being.
Yeah.
So that's how I basically see that. Now, you may have a different view, but
no, that's pretty much where I stand on that too. And I mean I guess you can consider that a social justice warrior position.
Well, it is if the right wing of your government is essentially based in evangelicalism.
Yeah.
If it's an evangelical idea, and that's what they're based on. And like I said, you can take that and make that whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
You get a story, you get a book. You can edit books. You can edit books. There's many versions of the Bible out there. King James, whoever, who knows what was originally written? We weren't there. But, I mean, it all gets revised into this edition and that edition. I've heard it said mostly men are doing it. I've heard that said many times. I'm sure, I don't know if there's any women, mostly men have revised it. But if you look out and I will note we're both men, thank you very much. I'm just saying that. So, but anyway, so I'm saying that as a man, King James was a man, so he wrote the Bible. But anyway,
something else. So I mean, I don't know if I'm a man. I might be from Mars or something. I had a debate once here with somebody. I was saying that maybe the origins of man weren't from Earth. That maybe we actually derived from Mars and we ended up here. Somebody thought it was a loon.
Well, if you're from Mars, so was King James. So.
Yeah, who knows?
Anyway, the point is that whatever. We're all from the same whatever we are. So anyway, the thing is that out there right now, and this is something that's kind of disturbed me. I think with evangelical understandings taking up so much room in conservatism rather than conservative economic ideas.
Yeah.
Because in the past, conservatism was mostly economic. Now it's mixed up with evangelical ideas, and it's gotten bloated and overblown. And
when you try to mix religion with economics, I mean, there's going to be a natural clash because
that's going to, because
Christianity, as far as you know, is like so anti people that are
rich. Give to the poor, feed the people, and now it's like we'll just, now it's like the robber barons or like Prince John before Magna Carta. Let's just rob from the peasants.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from that point of view in the modern time, the peasants being the working poor, the fact of the matter is that the idea of Roddenberry's, universe where everybody was kind of more egalitarian, it either looks impossible to reach at or communism. We talked about that too, but I'm just saying that, it just seems unreachable in that world. And like I said, it just kind of falls apart, in terms of how the current perception is. And actually, let me wait to bring up another point about Star Trek and money, but go to your next question because I want to wait for that point.
Okay, another quote was, if man is to survive, he will have learned to take a delight in the essential differences between men and between cultures. He will learn that differences in ideas and attitudes are a delight, part of life's exciting variety, not something to fear. And that, I guess that speaks right to diversity.
We're going right back to conservative Star Trek fans again. I mean, it's going to be unavoidable to deal with this. But, another part of conservatism that I don't think is necessarily connected to religion, but probably more, maybe it is a little bit, but more economy in a lot of ways, is, racial hatred. I mean, let's face it. We are dealing with a president in the United States, and I'm going to say this, who was voted in only on the platform of hatred.
Yeah.
Only on that platform, not on balancing the budget, not with the economy, but getting rid of undesirable peoples.
Yeah, I mean, what that wall is all created from paranoia and
it's hatred. Hatred with capital H. It is all based in hatred. And Gene Roddenberry, that's not the first time I've heard him talk about, people, in those days. Now, I want to note that that's one thing that's happening now that might get mixed up in a lot of this too. I haven't really heard the female point of view. But they changed that in the 80s anyway. The whole we're no man or man thing.
Yeah.
They changed we're no one or person or whatever. I'm not really worried about the pronouns here, but, man used to refer to humankind.
Yeah.
Almost like, well, man has man in it.
Yeah.
So they were, but, now, and I'm not going to use the word political correct. Political correct is a conservative dog whistle word. I won't use it. Thank you. But like I said, I don't use dog whistles that aren't for me. Yeah. But the point is that, so definitely, so people, again, who complain now, like you said earlier, that Star Trek is a show that is kind of, why do they have to have a woman or a black character or an Asian character here? Well, that's what it is. I mean, now a lot of videos out there have said the same thing we're saying right now. That's exactly what Star Trek is fundamentally. Even though TOS predominantly had a group of white men going into the future, that wasn't because, and I wanted to add this, that was not because Gene Roddenberry had a masculine white ideal of that diversity.
Yeah.
I mean, he wanted a female first officer in the cage.
Yeah.
They would not let him have it.
Yeah. He had to fight people.
Right. It's like you either get Spock or you get her, and he chose Spock. Yeah. And there was censorship. There was tight censorship in those good old days that people rhapsodize about of the early 60s.
Yeah.
There was not a lot you could really do. I mean, everything was very tightly censored.
Yep.
This was the Cold War, and, Russia was censoring its information very badly. America wasn't doing much different. It was just that we were not pretending we didn't do it, but we were doing it. And, Gene, I think, for TOS, did the best he could under that censorship.
Yeah.
No, Uhura didn't have much of a character. Chekhov's character trait seemed to be that he mentioned he was Russian every 5 seconds, but, Sulu, well, he had a bit of a character, but, no, I mean, they weren't able to do it back then due to censorship. It wasn't because Gene felt that we just needed to pepper in somebody here or somebody there. He genuinely wanted a spaceship Earth. Isn't that what he called it?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Spaceship Earth. I heard him refer to that, and that went with the quote you just made. So yeah, I mean, so Gene was totally advocating for that diversity as part of Star Trek.
Yeah.
These people would not be, well, Uhura's going to be a character from the United States of Africa, but she's kind of going to be this bland, white male caricature of it, or, Sulu's going to be that way. They were going to have traits endemic to their own culture, but work together as this team going out and exploring the galaxy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so again, the diversity thing in Star Trek is part of his vision. Totally. Yep. What's the next one?
Yeah, the next quote says, quote, Star Trek was an attempt to say that humanity will reach maturity and wisdom on the day that it begins not just to tolerate, but to take a special delight in differences in ideas and differences in life forms. If we can't learn to actually enjoy those differences, to take some delight in those small differences between our own kind here on Earth, then we do not deserve to go out into space and meet the diversity that is almost certainly going to be out there.
Well, that kind of goes in what I just said too, but, it got me to thinking about something else that happened. I'm sure you and I mean, I think you were kind of not alive yet when this started. I know I wasn't. We had the Apollo program and the moon landing.
Yeah.
At first it was all very, very, embraced, and everybody loved the idea we were exploring space and going out beyond our orbit and everything. But, again, around Watergate and, a lot of people, especially the Black community, especially anti-poverty leaders, started to say, why are we sending a bunch of, again, white men up to the moon with billions of dollars when we've got, poverty on Earth, we've got a lot of things that are going on. And that's kind of part of what Gene was trying to say. We had to overcome those issues before we went out there.
That's right.
And he was saying that in the 60s when the Apollo program was actually being developed.
Yeah.
Before we actually started going up there. So we were orbiting the Earth then, but Star Trek went off the year of the moon landing, didn't it? 69.
Yeah. I mean, I go back to thinking, Patrick Stewart some years ago was asked a question where he kind of gave the similar kind of answer, saying that, we need to take care of our problems here on Earth before we start going out into the stars, because we'll just take the problems we have here with us.
Right. And, if you look at a lot of the more dystopian sci-fi that's big now, and I'm going to say there's a lot of dystopian sci-fi that's really big since the 1990s, you see people who take their stuff out there.
Yeah.
And that writing device, I don't think is gimmicky. I think it's to relate directly to the audience of today.
That's right.
Who I see as a lot more cynical. They don't have the hope in the future. They might come home from working 2 jobs, wondering how they're going to pay their light bill, their gas bill, feed their kids. They give them a little bit of yogurt, and they spit it out and stick it on the wall, and they're going to cry, and then they got to make sure everything's turned off, and they got to make sure they get to sleep and get to work. They want a bunch of people going through this egalitarian. They want to punch the TV,
Yeah.
Because they'll feel envy and jealousy and all that stuff that I don't think that middle America in the 1960s really worried about.
Yeah.
All the enforced, obvious poverty that we see around us now, and, the middle class basically being eaten up. So this concept of Star Trek seems very distant, but it doesn't mean that Gene Roddenberry didn't see it as foreseeable.
Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry was a human. I don't think he was a seer or anything. I don't think he had some great, higher power. He actually spoke against that. But I think he also acknowledged, even in Star Trek, he said, yeah, there's going to be bumps in the road before we get to where we are.
Yeah.
He spoke of a third world war. We almost killed each other.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you look at what's happening today in terms of the Star Trek universe, it would be interesting in retrospect to hear Kirk. And, I mean, there was that reference in Star Trek 6, which I didn't mention, where Spock made that joke apparently to reach Vulcan. Only Nixon could go to China.
Yeah.
And that's a joke that can relate right to us. So, I mean, and Kirk and Card even said, we're aware of our own paths, even if we're ashamed of it. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's little Donald Trump dancing around in his head. Like, well, this is a shameful part of our past, or, George Wallace or David Duke or whoever.
Yeah.
Shameful parts of Earth's past.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, Gene Roddenberry was maybe a little forward thinking in that idea that we'd have to deal with problems on Earth first and then head out there.
Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to add, that's led to some people thinking that Gene Roddenberry's point of view in the future was cynical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was. I don't think he didn't acknowledge that people were still traveling to space. I mean, there were certainly different reasons for the Apollo program going belly up. It wasn't just, lack of public interest, there was manipulation by what turned out to be a crooked president Nixon. I'm just saying that, he kind of gutted NASA for his own horrible purposes. But the point I'm trying to make is that, I don't know what Gene Roddenberry thought of it, but, a lot of people still feel the way about space. And I wanted to add that in. There are certain people in my life who shall remain nameless who felt that way. And I said, well, and they even went further and said, oh, space exploration just gave us a lot of rockets and trips to the moon and pictures, but nothing really significant. And I said, hey, on Apollo 10, those astronauts photographed the moon coming up over, and it's called Earthrise. I'm sure we've all seen that picture. It's a stamp, I think, in some country. Famous photograph. Imagine you're a society, we've always seen the moon risen, you think the Earth has been the center of your universe for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Imagine one day you're in a position where you see the Earth rise over another celestial body.
Yeah.
Life, religion, everything seems to fall by the wayside there when you realize you're just a grain of sand out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and guess what Earthrise became? A symbol for the first Earth Day, the beginnings of environmentalism.
Yeah.
So can people honestly tell me that space travel didn't accomplish something?
Yeah.
It started environmental things. I mean, do you think if we hadn't had space travel, we'd be caring about what fossil fuels do to the Earth? We have satellites up there looking at the Earth and seeing what happens with it and what and pollution. I mean, there are things we can trace now that we didn't see back then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why there's a lot of ignorant people who say, oh, climate change only started like 30 years ago. No, it was going on way back in the 1930s. We just didn't have the technology to notice it.
Yeah.
Even before that even. So space technology in that has really helped us understand our planet, how it's destroying, how we're destroying it, and what we can do to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
And, I think that, the inner cynic in us always tells us, well, it's not going to work, but, it does. And I think that Gene saw that space could be key to helping us deal with those problems, but we have to use that as a medium to help ourselves, like you said, before we went out into it, and explored further out. So I think that also kind of unintentionally pointed to space travel as being more beneficial to Earth right now, like, life sciences, Earth sciences, rather than pursuing other planets.
Yeah.
Maybe we should try to think of space as a way to deal with climate change now than going to Mars. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And as a scientific mission to Mars might help us understand what our planet could be if we don't do something about it.
Yeah.
But,
I remember one astronaut, and I can't remember which one it was, but was on a thing on the Discovery Channel, and he was saying, and I don't remember exactly how he said it, so I'm just going to paraphrase. He said, being in orbit around the Earth, you look out the little window and you look down at, at the United States and, the continent that goes all the way down to the South Pole. You don't see any boundaries or any lines that show borders. All you see is one big landmass. And so, on our perception of the Earth when we look at it growing up is that it's got borders everywhere. We see lines drawn. And
it's funny you say
you don't
that
see
because,
that in space.
Where I actually heard that of all things? You're not going to believe it. I heard it on Charlie Brown. They did this show called This is America, Charlie Brown, where they put all these people in space. And one of the kids, I think it was Peppermint Patty, looked out the window and said, the big difference looking up here than looking down there? There are no boundary lines. We learn about those in school. Wouldn't it be interesting if we lived in a life like that?
Yeah. So it's like we're all one people, basically. There's nothing, that's all up here. The boundaries and stuff like the wall that separates the United States, that's all up here. Those borders don't exist. We just draw that on a map.
So like I said, that's a broad concept and it's not going to change overnight, but it does change your perception.
It does.
And,
like you said, it makes it seem more like a spaceship Earth than,
Right, because, when you look at, borders and things like that, look at, the borders are just another way of basically declaring a Cold War.
Yeah.
Why in the series of the United States do we have border patrols? Do we have, militarists at borders with weapons?
Even the borders between the states. There's still like some sort of friction.
Right, exactly. The border between a state where people have weapons and guns.
Yeah.
As eerie as that, how far is that separated from something like Checkpoint Charlie?
Yeah. There you go.
It's eerie to think, but, so I think Gene Roddenberry was seeing, because there was still border patrol back then, and I wanted to, speaking of Checkpoint Charlie, that was during the days of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
When the Berlin Wall was just, it had been about 6 or 7 years. So there were all these really heavy boundaries being put up during the Cold War. They called an imaginary boundary in Russia, the Iron Curtain, where there was a tight censorship. So there's a lot of boundaries really strict that were up in those days.
Yeah.
And censorship, is that not a boundary?
Yeah.
That's an imaginary wall. So Gene was like, I'm going to do a future where walls are broken and they're open. And, you know, I think now there's this tendency toward nationalism again. And people are like, I miss the good old days where we're all kind of held back.
Yeah.
You know, and that could go with the internet. You know, I think that's a broad discussion, but the idea of the internet kind of breaks boundaries. It kind of opens up things again, so borders are less, you know, prominent. But when people get accustomed to things they're not familiar with, they want to pull back and put borders up.
That's right.
Which means that we're kind of still in that mindset and we need to get out of it.
Yeah.
That's why I think the internet needs to expand more than retract. Thank you very much. I said it. And we need to expand and grow with it because you don't see borders from space.
Yeah.
It's like on the internet, you don't see borders.
Yeah.
Which is why to me, the internet is not a fantasy. It's more reality than we think.
Mm-hmm.
Because the borders you see on, and you know what's actually fictional when you look at it? Maps are made up and fictional.
Mm-hmm.
Those borders are just little pen marks, basically.
Yeah.
They're not there. I mean, imagine some little kid going up in space saying, where are the little borders that show the states? They're not there. We made them.
Yeah.
The borders are also some kind of made up thing.
Yeah.
Why isn't there a big Russia over Russia? Because it's not there.
Yeah.
You know, we assign these names, we assign these borders. And like I said, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that astronaut quote, and I heard it in Charlie Brown too, that, you know, that people do this. And that's why I think Gene's Spaceship Earth applies and that quote makes sense. So anyway, we got in a bit of a tangent with that. But next quote.
Next one, Gene says, and I quote, I condemn false prophets. I condemn the effort to take away the power of rational decision, to drain people of their free will, and a hell of a lot of money in the bargain. Religions vary in their degree of idiocy, but I reject them all. For most people, religion is nothing more than a substitute for a malfunctioning brain.
Well, that's pretty heavy, but to be honest,
they must have got him on a bad day or something, you know, when he said that.
Well, I mean, it's still compared to what I've heard these days, and I'll link again, it's still fairly eloquent.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, when you think of the 60s, you know, and what was going on then, and, you know, when you had the beginnings of sort of Jim Jones and people like that happening.
I think this was like when the evangelicals were just becoming the biggest thing around, you know.
Well,
it's like,
yeah, it started to evolve into suicide cults and things like that.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned Jim Jones. You know, people who started out as evangelical and had followers, and then they started to ask people for their houses, their money, their very personage, and they just lost their humanity and they lost their sense of self.
You see these big friggin' mega churches. They look like small cities, you know, and it's like, well, you people, you're giving money and you go to this place and you see this and you wonder, you know, where's my money getting spent? Well, you're looking at it. You know, you're looking.
And people say, oh, you know, I hate taxes. They don't do anything good. Well, look at that giant megachurch you're going to on Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, that's where your tax dollars are going. So, you know, if you want your taxes to go towards crumbling roads and foundations, don't go to your church.
There's no reason in the world why we can't go to a country like Ethiopia and take all the wealth that we've given to churches over the generations to help out these people. I mean, the Catholic Church, I think, is probably the wealthiest of all the religions. I think you go to Rome, you go to the
and they're way older than this country.
You know, and
way older than this country.
Yeah, I mean, they are adorned with gold statues and crucifixes and all that. I mean, do you really need all that? I mean, is it?
Let me quote, you know, somebody I heard about YouTube. It all comes off a bit like that religious network TBN, where it looks like somebody dive bombed a Kirkland store and spray painted everything gold.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's gaudy and overdone and about getting people to be intimidated.
Yeah.
You know, by look at the pageantry we have, and isn't that kind of what Rome did?
Yeah.
You know, they kind of presented themselves and dressed up everything with so much flair that people were willing to give everything to them.
Yeah,
it's sort of how you present your power.
Yeah.
And you know, in Star Trek. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, you know, at one time, I think religion was kind of like the way the internet is today. Everybody had to be involved in something religious in those days to feel connected to something. You know, and I think that was like the how do you call it, the forebearer of how we look at, you know, the internet. Like, everybody's into it now. Everybody's got to be connected in it some way. Not to say that the internet is religious, but I'm thinking, you know, people back then, that was the thing to do, was to be in a religion,
Right, except I think religion served a different function. Religion kind of reinforced borders.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
these are my folks, you and your folks, and we have to all be involved in our folks.
Yeah.
The internet is sort of like a similar principle where we all kind of are part of it, but the borders are taken down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like they say about extinction.
Hmm.
The new species that comes along ends up forcing the extinction of the last one.
Yeah.
We saw that in dinosaur history. We've seen that in our history.
Maybe that's why there's so much fighting on the internet, is because there are no borders. People are forced to have to deal with each other where they weren't before. You know what I'm saying? You got different clashes of ideologies.
I just wanted to mention this about Gene Roddenberry. I'm wondering if he was alive and in his 80s or whatever or something, how he would perceive the internet. If he would be a major, I mean, this is only speculation, if he would be a major advocate of it, or if it would make him afraid. Just judging by his personality, I think that he would have made the internet his best friend.
Yeah, I don't think he'd shy away from it. I think he would probably expect that there'd be some difficulty at first.
Right. He'd probably say, this is the beginning of what I'm talking about with the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
The beginning of kind of a united spaceship Earth. But, there's a line in Star Trek 6 I love to quote. I think I've quoted it before, from David Warner's Gorkon. If there's to be a brave new world, our generation will have the hardest time living in it.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not going to, it's a generation that were teenagers and young adults before the internet came along that are having the most trouble with it.
Yeah.
Because, they always say you form your taste between the ages of 1 and 20. And if it doesn't fit into that range, it's scary to you.
Yeah.
The internet came along when I was still a teenager, so it's not that scary to me. It came along a little later in the game, but it's still part of my core. If the internet came along when somebody was 20 or 30, it's going to scare them.
Yeah.
It's like that line in Back to the Future could apply today. Remember watching a little TV for a change?
Watching a little TV.
I just remember that line. I mean, I could hear that now. Oh, get off the internet and watch some TV for a change. Just like their parents would say, get off the TV and read a book. Yeah. Or get your head out of that book in 1890 and go pick flowers or something.
Yeah.
Whatever time it is, there's always something. So except this time it's not an incremental. It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that I probably wouldn't have met in my life before now because of the internet, but I also know understandings that are different than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
So, that's gonna cause some conflicts right there because we do have those borders we set up.
Yeah.
That make things difficult. So I'm noticing borders and the lack thereof is starting to get a big part of the Gene Roddenberry conversation, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because, having borders is a way of not accepting diversity, right? I mean,
right. It's a way of enforcing prejudice and, and basically, in America, and I'm not going to say this because, obviously I'm at least multi-ethnic here, but, we both have some white blood in us, at least, I think, in my case. A lot of it has to do with this country reinforcing white supremacy. It really does. The sense that, there were people before us, we came here with our manifest destiny and took them over, and we're going to reinforce those lines very rigidly. Yeah. And, it's ugly when you think about it, but those are all starting to kind of fade away. Interest in reinforcing borders like that is kind of waning. So, that's an interesting kind of conundrum that, I keep hearing in these Gene Roddenberry quotes about the borders kind of breaking down.
Yeah.
And that being part of the future. So, and what's the next quote?
He said, I guess he was being asked about Star Trek back in the 60s. He says, in those days, you couldn't get blacks on television, but I not only had a black woman and a black officer.
Yeah, that's on the 25th anniversary special.
Yeah. And he says, that'll show him. That's what he thought. One of these people, they didn't want that on there. He says, I'll show you. And he did it. So,
well, that kind of goes in with
follow up to that quote. Was what something Martin Luther King said to Michelle, who was considering not coming back to Star Trek. And he said, don't you understand, for the first time we are seen as we should be seen. You don't have a black role, you have an equal role. And that's like, what happens with Gene Roddenberry's vision of how there should be diversity on the crew. You see how it kind of dominoed effect into reality. Now you have...
said that, you are who you are, but you're in a position where you are equal, and there's an assumption of equality, and you're not some sort of servant character to the white people on the show.
That's right.
You're part of the crew. But she's still African. She still speaks Swahili. She still has that heritage. They didn't take that away from her. They didn't make her bland.
Yeah.
But she's part of the crew, an integrated part of the crew, rather than, they didn't cast a black woman as Yeoman Rand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That'd have been more typical, to cast a black person in a subservient role.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring the white male captain his food or his log or whatever. She was part of the crew who could help do things and command the ship if they needed that situation. Yeah. So, yeah, and dealing with, I'm going to go back to this again. Only time I can really do this. Sonequa Martin Green, who's in that, like Whoopi Goldberg, who said that she was inspired by Nichelle Nichols before she was even Whoopi Goldberg, if you know that quote. Sonequa Martin Green said that Nichelle Nichols was my prime inspiration, but she kind of indicated that a lot of people in her peer group didn't remember her that much. And, I wanted to bring that up because I'm starting to wonder, as censorship is lifted over the years, you see more shows with black characters, you see more shows with female characters taking on lead roles. Do you think that sometimes, people kind of take that a little bit for granted? That, it wasn't always there. I've actually heard people on YouTube say that, as long as I can remember, I've seen black characters and women on TV. Why does it need to be pushed, in our face now? Like you said about this whole thing. Why do we have this politically correct thing? And I'm thinking, well, first of all, how old are you? Were you alive in the 1960s and 50s and 70s?
Yeah.
Do you remember a time where, Whoopi Goldberg, if this is to be believed, probably is, said when she saw Uhura on the TV, she said, "Mom, there's a black woman on TV and she ain't no maid." And I mean, that's revelatory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like for the gay community, having Ellen come out. I mean, these are revelatory things where it's just like it breaks open a barrier that you never thought would actually happen. And like I said, we can talk, and now I hear, like you said, I hear people saying that, oh, well, Uhura and Sulu didn't have many lines. Well, is it understood that in that time when there was heavy censorship, the fact they were present and doing an important job equal to the other crew members on the ship wasn't important enough?
Yeah. Because like I said, it was a domino effect that trickled down into society, because you had Martin Luther King, who actually was watching Star Trek. He confronts Nichelle, who was thinking about quitting, and he didn't want her to quit. He wanted her to stay on there because
she said that she needed to know what she was doing up there.
Yeah.
What her character was creating.
Yeah. And what we see, on the television, we see this on television,
And this is kind of a side note to this, and I wanted to mention this. I was watching some videos, a number of them, not just one, where it talked about why should we worry about Star Trek today being canon? Like this. Yeah, like this. I mean, I've seen it, but it is what it is. There's issues with it. Or like the JJ stuff or whatever. Any of that. I don't care what the situation is. People are saying now, why should Star Trek be canon? Why should we worry about canon when all of Star Trek is imaginary? And you just answered that question right there. Why should Star Trek canon be important? Because of the influence of Nichelle Nichols on Martin Luther King, on Whoopi Goldberg, on Sonequa Martin Green, on Dr. Mae Jameson, who herself was an astronaut.
Yep.
End of discussion.
Yeah.
On that level. Yep. So yeah, Star Trek being imaginary is not, and I repeat, not an excuse for not having a strong grasp of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It isn't.
I mean, that was the whole purpose of what Roddenberry wanted to put the show on the air for, was not just to tell stories, science fiction stories. He wanted to make...
Anybody can make an imaginary story about somebody in the future.
Yeah. He wanted to make social commentary.
Exactly. Explore the human condition in a space age format, I believe is how it's been described.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention another thing that kind of went along with what this quote we're talking about. And I forgot what it was. A little later. I mean, this is a whole maelstrom of points that are just gonna...
I'll be here.
Oh, you must have said some word that it heard.
Like I said, unlike Star Trek, voice recognition technology is in its infancy now.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we're
so
still working out the bugs.
and know all you people out there, my Google Chrome is not possessed by some entity. Thank you very much. So anyway, just wanted to debunk that. So before I remember what it is, I'll get to it probably at another point, my other point, but the Star Trek imaginary point, I've kind of got that out. So next quote.
Well, actually, that was my quotes that I had to prove that.
Oh, okay. So you're all done with the quotes. But so anyway.
So did you have some? You said you found some?
Well, these aren't quotes. These are just ideas I wanted to explore on my own, but they're through the quotes. Now, you mentioned these quotes about Gene Roddenberry. So we've established three things, right? Gene Roddenberry was an atheist. We've heard that. I mean, he all but said, "I'm an atheist and I'm wearing it on my head," and through those quotes.
Yeah.
He was a humanist.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is a humanist? It's an older word for a social justice warrior.
Yeah.
And an even older word for what the abbreviation of that, the SJW. And sometimes I wonder if these people even know what SJW stands for.
Yeah.
Sometimes I honestly really do. I don't know if they realize it. But, you know, one of the issues I wanted to mention, and this is just about Gene Roddenberry, and I don't know if you have a quote to prove it, but just from what you know of him, we talked about this before we actually went on. There seems to be an idea that, you know, why should people worry about the good writing or the continuity or canon or whatever of Star Trek? And by the way, I think we've mentioned our canon quota for the week here. We were going to be doing that because there was the Midnight Edge debate, which, by the way, there was a debunking video I wanted to mention on that, which I'm glad there is.
Yeah.
Because we were a little bit concerned about it, but, you know, things are kind of falling into place there. But anyway, so, yeah, the idea that, well, canon doesn't matter because if CBS owns it and they say it's canon, it's so. Now, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you think, from what we know about Gene Roddenberry as a person and his vision of Star Trek, do you think that he would want to discourage critical thinking about what he did?
Of course not.
In the sense that now people, but is it, because like I said, would not saying that, you know, whatever CBS says it is what Star Trek is now, isn't that like some kid saying, well, I mean, I've heard different, but I read it in a book, so it's got to be true?
You know, it goes way back to where he was having his fights with NBC back in the 60s, and you know, and later when they were doing TNG, he was constantly at fight with the people that run these TVs, corporations and stuff, because they wanted to constantly change the way they were presenting Star Trek. And like I said before, he had a rule book on what it's supposed to be like, and he stuck to that rule book, and they didn't like that. So for CBS to declare that this is canon would be like Gene Roddenberry say, no, you don't even have the right to say that because this is my property and I say what's canon and isn't canon. You don't get to say that, I do. You know, and I think that's really ridiculous that they take that on themselves, like they, you know, like they can say that.
I don't know if CBS has actually made a specific statement on canon. I'm just saying that a lot of people think that, oh, well, that I've seen, think that, oh, because CBS own it.
Yeah.
Then what they say is given.
Well, there's owning it, and then there's owning it, and they only have the legal ownership of it, but they weren't the creators of it. So they,
right, and that goes with the idea that is Star Trek just a franchise, or is it going a little bit beyond that?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and this is another important thing about Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry could have taken the Star Trek world and set it in a version of Earth that had nothing to do with our reality.
Yeah.
Okay, he could have set the original Star Trek in a totally alternate timeline. I mean, he could have set it in an alternate timeline where the 20th century was run by a bunch of literal circus clowns. Not as if it wasn't sometimes, but I'm just saying that it was run by, you know, literal circus clowns going around coming out of clown cars, telling everybody to put little roses with water on them. You know, he could have totally altered our history, but no, he set Star Trek in a place where the world of the 60s was actually the past, where we were in the same timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. And so people say now, you know, is Star Trek something that Star Trek is just a writer's device? It's just, you know, a fictional story that's imaginary. And they're going to go whatever we want it to be. Is ludicrous because Gene deliberately set it in our future.
Yeah.
So we could reference our past in Star Trek as an example of what to do and what not to do.
Yes.
That's why the Prime Directive was developed in its way. If you see a Next Generation, there's an episode where they're dealing with two people who are in a parasitic drug,
Yep.
you know, and Crusher wants to wean them off it. And Picard talks about the Prime Directive as a philosophy. You mentioned Prime Directive before as being a bit of a bane of the alt-right today. But that the Prime Directive was proof that time after time, people interfering in lesser developed cultures ended in disaster. Yeah. Could that not be seen as a dig at colonialism?
Yeah.
You know, people going into countries thinking they have the right to take their resources. You know, the U.S. have installed dictators into countries over our oil interest.
Yeah.
You know, could that not have been part of the learning curve that led to the Prime Directive in the first place?
Yeah.
Seeing our own history and how we fouled up as people, influencing how, I mean, when we would have gone into space as conquerors the way we are now?
Yeah, I mean, well, if Gene presented his show as a show where people didn't learn a damn thing from the mistakes they made, would that be the kind of future we'd all want to be in? I certainly.
Harlan Ellison.
Yeah, I mean, that's not where I wanted. And Roddenberry was trying to say, like, look, if we do things and we learn from our mistakes, the future is going to be better than it is now. But if you want to go with the take it and reverse it, like a lot of people today want to do, you're not creating a brighter future. You're just creating a dystopian future in the Star Trek.
And you're creating a cynical situation where people who watch that kind of thing aren't going to be inspired to grow, aren't going to be inspired to do great things. I mean, come on, some of the science fiction, do you think it's going to produce the next Mae Jemison?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, why go out into space if our future is useless?
Yeah.
You know, the future isn't that it just happens to you. You know, it's something that we have to work toward. And we have to come together and help. And the key is coming together. And I think, again, you know, this is starting to sound like a pitch for the internet. I mean, because we're on the internet doing this. But I'm just saying that, you know, and the internet makes it possible for us to do this. But the fact of the matter is, that's those barriers starting to disappear again. And I really feel that Gene would not only advocate for the internet, but see it as a source for the beginnings of the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
People getting to know each other. Because, you know, you can read books about another culture, but books can be censored. TV can be censored. You can't censor words.
Yeah.
You can try, but you really can't.
Yeah.
You know, and so that, I think that's the schism we're dealing with now. That Gene Roddenberry's world is starting to happen, but some of us aren't ready for it yet, and there's this resistance, and a number of things have happened. So, you know, that's basically one side of his vision. I think we've already kind of covered this, but I wanted to mention this yet again. And it's that I'm not sure if you've seen the documentary Chaos on the Bridge.
No, I didn't see that. No, but you said that was on Netflix, right?
Yeah. Well, it was. It has something to do. William Shatner kind of hosted it. I don't know if you're familiar with Maurice Hurley. Are you? He's one of the writers for TNG.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think in the early days, you know, I think season 1 and 2. And again, you know, and this is the problem with writing staffs. There was some schism between him and I guess one of these, you know, some of the people who were involved in writing Star Trek. I don't know what it was. And it was all surrounding the fact that Gene was playing hardball with people who didn't, like you said, who didn't want Star Trek to go another way.
Yeah.
They wanted Star Trek to go kind of their way and, you know, more action or whatever it was. And this was during the early part of season 1 and 2 of TNG. And Maurice Hurley came into the show, I think it was season 2, and he felt the show was ridiculous. He himself said Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future was wacky doodle. Now, that's his exact words. Is it me, or have you noticed that a lot of, especially conservative Star Trek fans, seem to share some variation of that point of view?
Yeah, they do, but at the same time, they have their favorite episodes, and I think a lot of times, if you look at the ones that they like, it doesn't really talk too much about social commentary. It's all about, you know, fighting,
honor, battle, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always got to be something about conflict and fighting and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the buzzword conflict. I mean, conflict is a real thing, but I mean, people use it as a buzzword. I kind of mentioned that with First Contact. You know, in the 90s, if you saw this really sweet sci-fi thing where everybody's kind of getting along, you invariably have somebody saying, "Where's the conflict in it?" And that's kind of where we are today. Well, not everything.
Because they're not taking their phaser out every 5 seconds and blowing holes in walls. They don't see a conflict because they're not thinking.
When I go back to TOS, I think looking back at it,
Yeah.
A lot of times I think people overdress how much they actually pulled out phasers even there.
Yeah.
I mean, they did more than they do today, but Kirk wasn't solving every problem with a phaser.
No.
Sometimes he was kind of being on high about things, but he,
I remember I was telling you about how many times, on Next Generation, people would leave the ship and you wouldn't see a phaser. Nobody was carrying a weapon except Worf.
Right. Well, just to add a little levity to it, and Worf would almost be spoofed, like that one with Q. He's like, "Drop your weapons."
Yeah. But it just showed, the kind of idea that, we don't have to approach every situation with our guard up all the time. We have to trust, and we have to.
They wouldn't pull out their phasers; they'd pull out their tricorders and try to analyze the situation. Yeah. And just to bring this, and I've encountered this in conversations with a lot of people myself these days. I'm a very analytical person. We're sitting here analyzing Star Trek right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had this experience, but have you ever been around a person doing the same thing you're doing now, and they'll say to you, it's really getting up my nose, you're analyzing, you're thinking too much. Don't think so much. I've been getting that all month long.
I got that a lot growing up at home and stuff and at school, and I would make classes longer because I had like 10,000 questions about something in the science class or something. And
then you look for that person who says, "Well, I'm glad you're asking questions. The only way you'll learn." And you're thinking, you love that. And
I even had some teachers that would just say, "Look, just ask me after class," or something. They were basically trying to shove me aside because they wanted to get the day done, And
like I said, I think with Star Trek, and we've talked about this too with TNG and the Next Generation. With TOS, oftentimes you saw, Kirk, making a lot of speeches, but him being the only guy making speech.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a Sargon thing,
Yeah.
This is our business. He'd be the guy doing it. Everybody's sitting there, Kirk saying stuff, they'd be like that. But with TNG, Picard would sit there and he'd initiate him, everybody'd be talking, and then people started saying, "Oh, he doesn't have meetings on this show."
Yeah.
And like you said, you made it analogous to the 60s where everybody was kind of coming at 20 years after the Second World War, where there was one big leader barnstorming and talking, where in the 1980s we had the nuclear freeze, we had the end of the Cold War, where there was more negotiation.
Yeah.
And Picard represented that change.
Yeah.
And, rinse and repeat over the years. So, and now they're doing a prequel again. I'm going to bring this up, where they're basically, going back to the TOS era, but the TOS understanding where instead of that, Starfleet doesn't always fire, to Starfleet doesn't fire first.
Or doesn't fire enough.
I'm just saying there's a little difference in principle where it's like, but Picard might say, "Let's hold our fire completely.
Yeah.
Let's get on and talk to the Romulan on the screen," or "Let's get up there." Or, he didn't say, "We're going to kill the Borg." He said, "We're engaged the Borg." That can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
Now he got assimilated, of course, but I'm just saying that, and they had to use weapons against the Borg, but, they weren't chasing everybody down like, "Let's just fire weapons and blow everything up." It wasn't that way. Yeah. And, so I don't know. I'm starting to wonder, and I mean, I guess I've used up all my questions, but in closing, I wanted to ask a question. Do you think that just because of some screwed up things that have happened in society and to writing since Gene Roddenberry died, just in general, do you think that his vision of the future is a little harder to grasp for some people at this time?
Well, I was thinking about
and what we talked about
a few days back, and I was thinking, maybe there's a lot of young writers today out there in Hollywood who are writing for Star Trek today, but they don't really understand it, but they figure there's money in it, big money to get involved with the franchise, as they call it. If you write something on that your name is going to get remembered because you wrote something on Star Trek. But these people aren't really going there with an idea of making some kind of a statement or a social commentary. They're just writing a script for money. And that's not the way older writers would approach that show. They understood what Star Trek was, and they knew what was expected of them if they wrote a story for Star Trek. But today, it's not defined. I don't think it's very well defined for the writers today, because the people running Star Trek now are only interested in the special effects and the action and all that, and they kind of left Roddenberry's vision out.
Right.
So it makes it easier for the writers to write what they want.
Like I said, Chaos on the Bridge, it basically talks about, oh yeah, Gene had lawyers and he was limiting us and he was being a shark and he was being oppressive. And not only that, well, he was being oppressive and that was the very thing he taught us. He was a hypocrite, blah, 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 blah. But what was being missing there is, what were those lawyers protecting?
Yeah.
Were they protecting a franchise, an economic situation, or were they protecting an idea?
Yeah.
I mean, now if you talk to the late Harlan Ellison, he might have other ideas, but if we're going to talk about Wacky Doodle, I'm not going to go into that. But I mean, like I say, his whole thing is he's all about making toys or whatever it is. Whatever. But I mean, like I said, we have all these conspiracy theorists now who are into all that kind of business. But to be honest, Gene Roddenberry, like you say, he had those lawyers in there to protect people from trying to, because in the 60s, he didn't have that kind of power in Hollywood.
That's right. He was just starting.
Right. So he was just a guy who had been a cop, who had been in the war, who had been writing a little bit for TV, who was just starting out making his own series. And they were taking away characters that he wanted, like the #1 character from The Cage, which he really wanted. They took that away and everything. So what happened is that in the 80s, he wanted to protect his vision.
He learned something from what happened to him in the 60s that he wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. And
here's the thing. Remember he talked about people thinking that, oh, well, he didn't want conflict between the human characters? And people
there were times where there was conflict between the characters. I remember.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. He mentioned that Gene Roddenberry, we talked about many times, not wanting the human characters to be in conflict. But that brings up a question I had. Is conflict the same thing as challenge? Because I saw the human characters as having to challenge certain things sometimes. I mean, to challenge each other. When I think of conflict, I think of more like a war. And
a fist fight or something, right?
Well, yeah, or more like what Deep Space Nine tended to be, where there were grudges being held, where there was mistrust constantly.
Yeah.
I think that's what Gene kind of didn't want. He didn't want the human characters to all be like Landru.
Yeah.
I mean, people sometimes think the absence of conflict means the absence of challenges.
Yeah.
But there's a bell-shaped curve, It's not either or. You don't have, even Gene Roddenberry, complete peace and tranquility is joy to you, friend. That's kind of what his idea is. It's kind of bland nothingness.
Yeah.
And the extreme of that is, I'm going to break your neck and draw blood, basically, that's why they had that in Andrews Festival. So if Gene Roddenberry wrote that, well, I don't know if he wrote that story, but if he did that in the 60s, if he was putting out stories like that in the 60s, he must have understood that conflict and challenges aren't the same thing. The characters in TNG from the very beginning were always challenging each other. I mean, Data was challenged by Picard not to babble.
Well, I was thinking specifically of an episode where Data was disobeying an order to destroy, or to, what are those remember the little
exocomps?
Yeah. And him and Riker came to, he was disobeying an order, and Riker was about ready to throw him into the brig practically for mutiny.
Right. And
they worked it out.
That was after Gene died, I believe. But, people were saying, oh, there's not enough conflict in TNG, whatever. I mean, what do they want? They want Riker to throw Data out of the window and break to a million pieces or something?
Yeah. I mean, and
they wanted to go to the extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, if you really look at the show, I mean, conflict doesn't have to mean fist fighting or shooting. Conflict can be just a disagreement.
Like I said, it could be a challenge people have to face rather than, it's not like,
remember the girl there, pen pals? And
Sarjenka?
Yeah, and they didn't know whether or not they should help the girl, and everybody was sitting there.
They were having a conflict, but it was a verbal conflict.
Yeah.
It was an intellectual one. They were sitting there. They weren't, you didn't see, Riker over there, like freaking sucker punching Pulaski, saying that, you're going to let Data do this, you fool, I'm going to out the window and you're awful and I hate you, I'm going to pull out your hair, Is that what people wanted Star Trek to be? The people wouldn't resolve conflicts intelligently in the future?
Yeah, that's childishness, if your crew's acting like that.
I'm just giving you an example of how extreme it is, and now, of course, that's exactly what you tend to have.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, there are moments in this that I find cringy in that way, or like, I don't get what I want, neck pinch, kill you, you know, it's just, it gets to be that way. And I mean, the Star Trek principle is all still there, but conflict has to be all the way physical.
Yeah.
You know, rather than let's sit down and talk about this like adults.
Yeah.
You
There
know,
were times even when Kirk had conferences with his people or something, you know, remember the Balance of Terror, and they had to decide whether or not they should go after the Romulans for destroying the space stations out on the border.
right? He didn't just, you know, he didn't
Yeah.
go over there and stun Spock and say, I'm not going to do what you say or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, wouldn't that be Mirror Universe rules?
Yeah, it would be the captain's word and that's it. Everybody else shut up.
You know, I mean, I've actually heard some people kind of joke, you know, just on Facebook that this is actually all set in the Mirror Universe. But I mean,
it's got to be something.
you know, I mean, even the JJ thing, because, you know, the whole attitude is that everybody is, you know, kind of going to kill each other.
Too violent to be canon. It's just
maybe they're all Klingons. Maybe they're all just going to be pain sticks. You know, I mean, it's going to get to a cartoonish level. But I mean, I haven't seen the second year, so I don't know where it's going. But there was some. Now, like I said, Star Trek now, even, you know, JJ not as much, but, you know, again, I'm putting this up a lot because I'm not going to be able to do this in other podcasts.
At least with JJ, he said it was an alternate timeline, so we can give him credit.
I mean, yeah, they can kind of do Transformers type things, but and I don't see that as even related to Gene Roddenberry per se.
No, it ain't. But
I see they're using his characters in a legally sanctioned way, but you know, sometimes what I do is I take that JJ Prize and I take the Chris Pine and all those characters, and I send them out on their versions of the 5-year mission.
Yeah.
And just have them be the characters we all know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of rewriting it in my head, making up my own story, you know, because I know TOS, I know what they did. And,
yeah. I'm just saying, you know, instead of JJ trying to shoehorn this thing into the canon, he just said, no, it's an alternate.
And I know you haven't seen this.
That way we don't have to. And I wish they would do that and just admit it with Discovery that, you know, because it don't fit. Nothing about it fits with what we know of.
I know you haven't seen this, so I mean, it's hard to really make a good judgment on it. But
the only one I've seen was the second.
The one I put on YouTube, yeah.
YouTube, yeah.
If you look at it, it's like you're being powdered with fleas because it's like there's. This may sound weird, but a lot of times you see the kind of the festering remains of Gene Roddenberry Star Trek kind of laying there ready to come up, but they keep pushing it down with a hobnail boot. And it's like, you know, let that Gene Roddenberry-ness, based on all the quotes we talked about, based on that sense of humanity, you know, and whatever, and the Spaceship Earth idea, let that just happen.
Yeah.
You know, don't keep squashing it down with like, okay, so we're going to be human. It's like, I'm going to kill you. You know, don't keep making that the emphasis.
Yeah.
You know, let the humanity kind of happen.
Yeah, let it come out, you know, instead of trying to dodge it and go into something else.
It's like, stop. Let me go back and I mean, I keep seeing that, and I keep wanting to go back there and say, no, take all that out, put this in there. And that's what Gene Roddenberry was trying to do. Now, he didn't write every episode of Star Trek. He wasn't sitting there. I don't think he was sitting there behind the wings looking at everybody all the time, and people think he did. But I have the impression he might look at scripts. I'm sure, you know, because he probably was the last guy who had to look at the scripts, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he might say, well, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. That's not going to work. And people probably hated him for that.
Yeah, I mean, because, look, every writer wants to make their mark in the literary
Colin Ellison again.
You know, and, you know, when you come up against a guy that takes what you wrote and they black mark this and take that out. I mean, no writer wants to see that happen. But if you don't want to see that happen, then don't write for television. Just go write a book and publish it as it is. Don't go write for television. So, and that's what Ellison didn't understand.
Maybe you can agree on this. Do you think that fundamentally at the end, when we get all things done, do you think the issue with Gene Roddenberry and the producers of Star Trek and people who look at him now from afar, now that he's been dead for years, R.I.P. Gene Roddenberry, because, you know, he passed away 3 days ago, you know, in 1991. Do you think that one of the issues is that because he was facing a lot of challenges against what he was doing over the years, and he really was, people who didn't share his vision, people who wanted Star Trek to be marketed, and, explosion style, that sort of thing, do you think he himself had to step up to that plate and be challenging himself?
Oh, yeah, many times.
And that people look at it and they think, well, you know, we were challenging, but we weren't wrong. He was wrong to be challenging, that they're trying to put him in the position of being the villain.
They can see that now, but the man's not around to defend himself.
Right. I mean, isn't that kind of like kicking down the dead? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, Gene Roddenberry's not here to say no. You know, you got this all back afterwards. You know, this is what happened. You just didn't share my vision. You could have gone off and made some other show. You know, that you wanted to do.
The best way to answer that is to say, look, if I created something for television, it was my idea from day one, and I put this all together, and I wanted this show to reflect exactly what I created. Wouldn't you be protective of that, so that way somebody didn't just come around and chip away at it?
And like I said, you have a context, and once you have that context, you can do a lot of things. You can do right whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just have that base context. You know, I mean, again, it's like, you know, if you say you want total freedom, does that mean you want to personally own this show? Do you want to personally have, I mean, what's Gene Roddenberry's initial idea? You know, and I'm sure there's people out there trying to take the credit for that, but it was basically his idea. And he had a lot of people who came over the years who did share that same idea and who participated in it. And there were some excellent writers on Star Trek who did help out with that, TOS and Next Generation along the line. And there were other people who's like, what can I do to make this show more marketable for merchandise? More explosions! There were those people. And those people were harmful to Star Trek. And now they're trying to do that and no one's buying it. So, you know, it's...
I mean, I remember, what's that, Big Lots? Remember that store up here? Yeah. They had those Star Trek Beyond, those big Barbie doll kind of tall figures sitting on the shelf over there for 2 years.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, over at Ocean State Job Lot up here.
Yeah.
You know, they had all those J.J. Abrams bridge things, you know, the ones you had to complete with the figures.
Yeah.
They had them sitting there collecting cobwebs for 3 or 4 years too. So
they ain't selling them and they're not marking them down. And it's
like I said, so whose vision of Star Trek here? And I know this is a theme on almost every podcast we do, but we're actually getting to the root core of this. Yeah. Whose vision of Star Trek is driving this merchandise that Harlan Ellison types thought was the actual key to Star Trek? Exactly.
Bingo.
It's Gene's vision. The man that Harlan Ellison said was the enemy of creative freedom.
Yeah.
People now that, you know, and I mean, I've even heard conservative Star Trek fans labeling Gene Roddenberry as a fascist.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so a man who wanted to protect a vision of an egalitarian future is a commie pinko fascist? Come on.
Yeah, if that's true, you know, then I want to live in a country of fascists because, you know, Roddenberry wanted to see a better future than the one we're living in now.
You know, if I was a snide person, and I'm not, I could say, maybe that's the mirror looking back at you, not him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm not that way, but I mean, it could be looking back at you. So, you know, without any insult to anybody, I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, a conservative Star Trek fan does have the right to own their point of view. That does not mean, on the other hand, that I advocate it or that is in any means correct.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that right out there. I don't think it is correct, and I think it can be proven incorrect. You have the right to be incorrect. That's the thing about democracy. It sometimes advocates and for the mediocre. Okay? Yeah. So if you want to have a point of view that is proven over and over again to be mediocre, that's fine. You have that right. Just don't tell me and people that I know that has to be my opinion too. And that's kind of what Gene Roddenberry was all about. People on the Star Trek crew, you know, the TOS Enterprise, they didn't always have the same opinions about things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. Worf. If you've noticed in TNG, maybe this might have been stereotypical, Worf's first thing was always to fire something.
Yeah.
Let's blow that up. Let's activate Red Alert or something.
Remember when he let that Romulan die and the captain practically begged him to save him, and
right, and Crusher too.
Yeah, and Worf didn't want to because he didn't believe in that. You know, so
now, like I said, is Worf a conservative militarist? No, he's a Klingon. That's his culture.
Yeah,
it's honor and stuff like that, and you know he's trying to confront. But like I said, the fact that Star Trek
would be militarist if the captain forced him to give blood to that Romulan by saying, "I'm ordering you to do it."
But like he said, I don't want to make it an order.
Yeah, he didn't want to do that because he knew that would be trampling on Worf's beliefs and his, you know, his opinion. You know.
And like I said, the Klingon alliance was still tentative at that point. There was no alliance with the Romulans, and Picard knew he was. And see, this is the kind of storytelling Star Trek needs to deal with, where conflicts occur on the intellectual and verbal level.
That's right.
Because like I said, I mean, I don't mean to brag on myself, but I think myself and you are better people for having come up with that generation of Star Trek.
Yeah.
where, you know, and again, society reshaping itself again, but that side of society that says that, well, if somebody punches you, punch them back, they want to have dominance, and they're not. And like I said, I think Star Trek right now, its fundamental core system is coming up with current understandings. But I think at the end of the day, the more people study what Gene Roddenberry's vision was, there's plenty of interviews of him, both written and spoken, on YouTube, online. Read those interviews, look at that, and then come back and look at this, the JJ movies, whatever, and tell me which version of Star Trek means the most significant thing to you.
Yeah.
That's my little challenge for anybody who feels that way. Because what's happening now really doesn't have a whole lot to do with what Gene Roddenberry wished Star Trek to be. We're not even talking about canon or whatever here. We're just talking about the general au revoir of it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it isn't. I mean, do you have anything? Because that's pretty much my closing statement. Do you have anything to add to that?
Hey, you know, where we started to try to show people that Gene Roddenberry was, you know, a social justice warrior from the beginning. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody watching Star Trek today that they're seeing elements of that still in Star Trek, even though,
again, like I said, it's the festering elements of it now.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still lingering in there. And if they're seeing it and they're feeling offended by it, well, you shouldn't even be watching Star Trek in the first place, because you can go back to the beginning and you're still going to be seeing.
Like I said, if you're a person who just watched Discovery, like I say, and you think it's too SJW, go over to TNG. Mind blown.
Yeah,
it's gonna blow you to bits. Like, oh, I'm watching the wrong show. Okay, there's your point. Yeah. There's your point right there. Because I mean, if a person just watched Discovery and said, "Well, I didn't know something," well, go back to TNG.
Yeah,
blow your mind.
Yeah,
deeply SJW that is.
Yeah,
even TOS. I mean, it's gonna blow your mind. Even Voyager, like you said, even Enterprise will blow your mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so if it's in Discovery, it's like, well, that's one thing I like about it, even though there's a festering remains of it. You know, so it's like, it used to be thick in it. Really thick. And Gene wanted to be really thick. And when he was alive, it was thick in it.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Trek's always varied in quality. There's been continuity errors. We can discuss that and bitch about it and laugh about it all we want. But that's always been there. That's always been there. So, yes, I was emphatic about this. Yes, I was very earnest. And I'm happy about being earnest because Gene Roddenberry's writing inspired my vision of life and my awful, annoying, difficult, analytical personality that people today don't like. But I'm proud of being that person. And I'm proud I can come here with you every week and have these conversations because we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on this together. And if the Star Trek fans, you know, understood that people working on Star Trek need to work the same way and have these conversations, get the people started to have one of those Picard meetings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not like, well, I'm the guy doing the show. I'm going to hand this into you and you do what you can with them and I'm going to go off on somewhere.
If I had any advice to give to writers of Star Trek today, I would tell them this. If you're going to write a story, ask yourself this question. What do you want to say to society? That's
exactly. That's a simple question. What do you want to say to society? What do you want to say to the spaceship Earth, to the world?
Yeah.
People, I mean, Star Trek was seen all over the world. We all know that. I know people from other countries now who have seen Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it inspired their lives greatly.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why I want to establish this. Anybody out there who says that Star Trek canon or its history doesn't matter because it's all imaginary, it goes beyond imagination. It's future fiction.
Yeah.
You can't get much more human than that. That's anticipating a positive future.
Yeah.
That goes beyond our petty borders, our petty religions. I mean, do we understand Gene Roddenberry's vision? Maybe it's not to be understood yet. Maybe we'll get to it when we're ready. Maybe when we're flying out our own real-life Starship Enterprise, I think we will have it one day, we'll say, so this is what he was trying to say 300 or 400 years ago.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we're still understanding probably what philosophers 400 years ago said about what we would be in the future.
Yeah.
You know, it takes sometimes a little while to get there. It's not cynical, but that's how it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dancing around, but what is that basically the closing thing we could say here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's frustrating that we can't get there overnight. Okay, we're gonna stumble along the way, but you know, we learn from our mistakes and we're gonna get there.
I mean, and like I said, I don't want to see people complaining about Star Trek, you know, as it is today, because actually seeing this, rather than just having an opinion about its existence, it's still there. Like I said, it's still in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just pushed back a bit.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, I mean, if you want to, I mean, to wax Robin Williams about it, it's almost like the Star Trek Gene Roddenberry's vision is in a little corner of that ship saying, help me, help me. I would go in there and I would open it up and have it go, wah! Just, and just do its thing and just mutate all these. I mean, it would be so interesting, like, to have a Discovery episode, this kind of Pandora's box, you know?
Yeah.
Like, somebody had locked all the goodness and the social justice of the future into this little box, and they let it out, and there's all this big light show, and everybody kind of mutated into what they're supposed to be. That would be kind of cool. Like, the reason why our universe is so screwed up is because all that stuff that was Gene Roddenberry's vision, as it were, was locked away by some alien force in a Pandora's box that's been stored somewhere. And we let it out, and wing, we're all back where we should be again.
Yeah.
What just happened with that anomaly? Check the circuit!
Yeah.
Whatever. You know? It'd be kind of cool to do that. You know? Just like Gene Roddenberry's vision symbolically is in a little box. I feel like it's there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in that friggin' spore drive. Maybe his vision's in there floating around, his energy. Somebody's locked it in there, and it's like when it all comes out, everything will be what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, like I said, I've read comic books, and I've seen episodes even where they imply that an outside, like, remember Day of the Dove did that?
Mm-hmm.
They started creating these alternate realities to make everybody on the ship war each other.
Yeah, to fight, yeah.
I mean, they could do that. I mean, that would be a great way to say, symbolically, Gene Roddenberry's vision has been that little energy over there that we're not dealing with. And then we open it up, we're all going to be, so this is what we're missing out on. Let's go out and explore the galaxy and not kill people, you know? I mean, I think that would be really cool. I should write that fan fiction, maybe. No. But anyway, I have nothing more to say on Gene Roddenberry and the current Star Trek thing. But I wanted to address people directly. And, I mean, this is not going to go away. We're probably going to bring up elements of this over time again. But I wanted to directly correlate after Gene Roddenberry's been dead 91, 28 years now.
Oh, it's old, yeah.
Yeah, so he's been dead 28 years. We had the 50th anniversary of Star Trek come along, and it's not in its golden age. And it's not because the quality of the show is actually as bad as it could be. It could be a lot worse, to be honest. It's that it's not getting the care it needs.
Yeah.
And it's not getting the vision that it needs. And I'm not saying Gene Roddenberry is the only one to do it. There are many amazing people out there who I'm sure share a vision of the future that he is. And the fact is, I'm worried that they're cleaning off a toilet in a Walmart somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I just worry about that. I'm like, you know, and I always think of that Good Will Hunting character that I find doing maintenance work, or that homeless guy who's got a better vision for Star Trek. It's like, why are you working out there? Why are you out here on the street? Why are you cleaning floors for a living? You know, you got to wonder. I mean, it could all be out there.
Yeah.
You know, so like I said, all of you out there who think you know about what Star Trek is, read Gene Roddenberry's quotes, think about it, and then look back at what's happening now, and then come back and tell us about it. Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. And next up, episode 40. Haven't figured out what it's going to be yet on my end, but it's going to be. So, live long and prosper, everybody. R.I.P. Gene Roddenberry. Thank you for the future.
Thanks.
Thank you for the future, even if it hasn't come yet. Thank you, Gene, for planting that seed. We appreciate it. We love it.